The 13th Warrior is a 1999 film starring Antonio Banderas and Omar Sharif. Based on the novel Eaters of the Dead, the film follows the adventures of an Arabic man who visits European lands inhabited by Vikings from the north. 13 of these men take on a quest to travel further north to help protect an isolated fortress that is under attack by a mysterious and savage enemy. The film includes themes of honor and courage, with exciting action and heroic sacrifices. But one sacrifice that is easy to overlook happens in the first 10 minutes of the film. There we see a Viking funeral in which a woman is lifted up in front of a ship that carries her dead chief. She chants about her ancestors and then is carried onto the ship, which is lit on fire and burned to the waterline. The visitors are shocked by what they see. Like them, I always wondered, who was that young lady and what exactly happened to her? We can look for answers in Beowulf, the Old English poem that inspired Michael Crichton to write Eaters of the Dead. Like the men in the 13th Warrior, the hero Beowulf travels to a distant land to fight dangerous monsters. After many difficult battles, the story ends with a Viking funeral in classic style. The people prepared him a magnificent pyre on the ground, hung about with helmets, battle shields, and bright coats of mail. The lamenting warriors laid their glorious leader in the midst and began to wake, or watch over, the greatest of funeral fires in the barrow. Wood smoke climbed up, dark over the flames. Roaring fire mingled with weeping. The tumult of the wind subsided, until the fire had crumbled the body, hot to the heart. Well, that was an epic ending to the story, but no one died at the funeral. So let's look at Viking funerals in another film and, believe it or not, in a video game. The Vikings is a 1958 film starring Kirk Douglas and Tony Curtis. At the end of the film, the Viking hero leads his men in battle against an English castle. In the end, one of the heroes receives the greatest honor, a grand Viking funeral on a burning longship. First, he is carried on a stretcher to the waiting ship. One of the archers fires his bow, and the rest join in. It's kind of funny that half of them miss the ship. Well, enough of them hit their mark, and the ship sails away on fire. The end. This was entertaining, but there was no sacrifice to shed light on what we saw in the 13th Warrior. Now let's look at a video game you may have heard of. The Witcher 3 features a professional monster fighter named Geralt. In one of his adventures, he travels to the far north, where he finds a Viking funeral already in progress. The warriors carry their deceased king down to the ship. They are watched by the queen, on the right, and a young maiden on the left. The maiden turns away, boards the ship, and embraces her king as the ship is pushed off to sea. When the first flaming arrow strikes, she is clearly alive and well, still hugging her king. Soon the ship sails away, engulfed in flames. We could only hope the poor girl passed away from smoke inhalation before any flames got near her. By the way, one of the people on the dock is Ceres, the future queen unless you play the game's hero like an idiot and she doesn't get the throne. But anyway, moving on. The game may have shed a little more light on the mystery, but we still can't be sure who this lady was and what exactly happened to her. Was she the chief's wife? Or a queen? Was she a young maiden who served in the chief's house? Either way, her fate on that ship is the same. To find more answers, we can go to another source of inspiration for the Eaters of the Dead. As I browsed through my history books, imagine my surprise when I read a chapter that perfectly describes, in detail, the scene that later played out in the 13th Warrior. The chapter is titled A Viking Funeral, AD 922, by Ibn Fadlan. Next, let's read passages from the chapter, focusing on the lady in the last few days of her life. The language will be edited and toned down because, I'm sorry to say, it can get quite graphic. Ibn Fadlan wrote, I was told that the least of what they do for their chiefs when they die is to consume them with fire. When I was finally informed of the death of one of their magnates, I sought to witness what befell. When one of their chiefs dies, his family asks his girls and pages, which one of you will die with him? For the most part, it is the girls that offer themselves. One of them answered, I. The people now began to occupy themselves with the dead man, to cut out the clothes for him, and to prepare whatever was needed. Meanwhile, the girl gave herself over to drinking and singing, and was cheerful and gay. When the day was now come that the dead man and the girl were to be committed to the flames, I went to the river in which the ship lay. There came an old crone, whom they called the Angel of Death. It was she who attended to the sewing of the chief's garment. It was she, also, who was to end the girl. They carried their chief into a tent placed in the ship, seated him on the wadded and quilted covering, and supported him with pillows. The girl who had devoted herself to death meanwhile walked to and fro, entering one after another of the tents which they had there. The occupant of each tent lay with her. In the afternoon they led the girl to the ship. She then placed her feet on the extended hands of the men, was raised up 3 times, and uttered something in her language each time. I inquired of the interpreter what it was that she had done. He replied, "The first time she said, 'Lo, I see here my father and mother.' The second time, 'Lo, now I see all my deceased relatives sitting.' The third time, 'Lo, there is my master, who is sitting in paradise. Paradise is so beautiful, so green. With him are his men and boys. He calls me, so bring me to him.' Then they led her away to the ship. Men came up with shields and staves, and handed her a cup of strong drink. This she took, sang over it, and emptied it. The crone admonished her to drain the cup without lingering, and to enter the tent where her master lay. The hag seized her by the head and dragged her in. The men began to beat upon their shields with the staves, in order to drown the noise of her outcries, which might have terrified the other girls, and deterred them from seeking death with their masters in the future. Yeah, no kidding. Then they laid her down by her master's side. They seized her by the feet and by the hands. The old woman known as the Angel of Death now knotted a rope, and they ended her life with the rope and a dagger. The next of kin to the dead man now drew near and, taking a piece of wood, lighted it. The wood which had been piled under the ship was ignited. Then the others came up, each one carrying a stick already lighted, and they threw it all on the pyre. The pile was soon aflame, then the ship, finally the tent, the man and the girl, and everything else on the ship. A terrible storm began to blow up, and this intensified the flames and gave wings to the blaze. So ends the mystery of what happened to the girl who volunteered to follow her master to paradise. How do we, the people of the 21st century, make sense of her choice and the actions of her people? Was her sacrifice any more or less than a firefighter, or a police officer, or a soldier who dies in service to their country? How can we judge them? Reading history provides a window into cultures and behaviors long past. Sometimes we need to understand what was acceptable at the time, even if such things are no longer tolerated. The best we can do is learn from the past and improve ourselves. As for the girl on the ship, whether or not you believe in an afterlife, I can only hope she entered the paradise she was promised. She certainly earned it. Thank you for watching. Please like this video and see the description below for some of the books and videos featured here.